Welcome back, everyone, to another episode in our Xamarin 101 series. I'm James Montemagno, and today I'm going to actually describe what is involved in a Hello World application, describing XAML, what it is, how we use it, and how we increase a counter from 0 up to infinity. So tune in. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Xamarin 101. I'm James Montemagno, a program manager over at Microsoft and a longtime Xamarin developer, almost a decade. And on my channel here on YouTube, we have been building out an application together from scratch, sort of the what does it look like to build a Xamarin application in late 2020 going into 2021. These videos are a little bit longer, but I really take the time to describe exactly what I'm doing, what every little setting is, property is, how I'm building the application, and what is involved in it, instead of shorter sort of snippets of video or documentation that you might read. So we've been building out my Coffee application, which will have a list of coffee equipment, how to grind the beans, how to make coffee, and track my coffee consumption. And that's what we've been building out. So if you haven't seen the previous episodes, I'll put them up there in that corner or down there in the show notes. Definitely take a look at those. There's a Xamarin 101 playlist. And additionally, don't forget you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever I put a brand new video out. All right, today we are going to understand Hello World button clicking events and what it means to create our user interface in XAML. Okay, so let's go ahead over to my desktop. In the previous episode, we cleared out our Xamarin.Forms shell template and we started by adding a brand new page in our application. So it is blank. It has a beautiful orange background we can see here, and it's a blank page. We added a page to our XAML. Now, there are two ways to build user interface with Xamarin Forms, either by XAML, a XML markup, which I prefer personally, or with C# or F# with just code. I may create a video on how to describe the exact same thing I'm doing here with that, but I prefer XAML, so that's what I'm going to go with. Okay, so let's actually describe XAML. Well, it's a XML-based markup here. And what it does is it describes what the user interface is. Here we see that we have a content page. And that content page has content inside of it, which we can see here. Now, fascinatingly enough, there are parts of XAML or XML that are implied automatically in the XAML. So for example, the content page.content is implied by whatever's inside of it. So if I wanted to, I could delete this here and it will work just fine. It's the same background here. If I go back to white, for example, here, we can see it's still valid XAML markup, whether I have content or content page. That sort of dot is a property on the page, and which is what you would access in the code behind. So here we can see that I have resources, content, triggers, toolbar items. I can set these properties, some of them up on the direct node of content page, or by adding them in here. So I'm going to add an array of toolbar items, for example, or I may set the dot resources inside of here, which we can see is a bunch of resources that I could access in code here. So some of them are implied automatically, which the root, the default of a content page is content. So that's automatically implied here. Now, I will say this is that we're going to be putting different layouts and views or controls inside of this content page. The nice thing about XAML is the spacing, the indenting, it doesn't matter any at all. It doesn't matter if these are on new lines, that they're not on new lines, anything like that. It doesn't matter. As long as it's valid, as long as it can be parsed, you're good to go. So a few other things in the XAML before we continue is I want to point out that we have some information up here, some default namespaces. The default is the Xamarin.Forms namespace. We have another namespace, which is X here. We can also note that if I was to go to my app shell XAML up top here, we see we have my own namespace of local. So you can create your own namespaces just like you would have a using statement inside of C#. Same thing here. So if you had a model or a view model, you could access it there. And then we have properties. So background color white, for example, is a property that we can set there. Now, if we look at what's in this page, we have a stack layout, which is a stack of controls, which are horizontal or vertical. And by default, they stack on top of each other vertically. There are other properties inside of here, such as orientation, which I can set to horizontal or vertical. But many controls have default properties set on them, so they don't need to be overwritten. I don't need to explicitly say that it is vertical. The Xamarin team has decided that that is the default that most people are going to use. Now, if you want to get access and look a little bit further into what's available, you can go to docs.microsoft.com/Xamarin. That will take you to the Xamarin documentation. Here under Xamarin.Forms, you can see all Xamarin.Forms docs, which I think is great. And then here, you'll see user interface and say, see more. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you concepts, views, command type controls, different settings that you may have. And I really like these concepts: pages, layouts, views. And this is going to describe what's available in each of those. So here's the layouts. And we noted here that in our code, we had a stack layout. Every page can have one item inside of it. So you have to have one layout inside of it, or one control. If I didn't put a stack layout and try to add multiple labels, it wouldn't be valid XAML. So for instance, if I was to remove this stack layout here, this is still valid. What's not valid is me trying to put multiple sort of items inside of the content. So you can see content is set more than once. It's not valid anymore. So we'd have to remove those. And that's where layouts come in. It allows you to have multiple views inside of some sort of layout, if you will, which describes how those controls will be set out. So for example, we have a scroll view, which can scroll a bunch of things inside of it, a frame, which has frame with a border with rounded on it, which can have items inside of it, stack layout, absolute, relative, grid, or flex. I mostly use stack layout and grid. Grid's my favorite. It's rows and columns. Flex layout comes from the web. It's a little bit more involved. But this will walk you through what all of these are, and you can tap on for documentation. Then views, on the other hand, are things that you put inside of layouts. So things like a box view, an ellipse, an expander, a label, a line, an image, a map. These are all the controls built on, oh, there's me, built into Xamarin.Forms. So polygons, rectangles, web views, buttons, image buttons, radio buttons, refresh views, search bars, all these things. And that's just stuff that's built into Xamarin.Forms. There's tons of third-party controls that you can get access to as well, of course, too. So all sorts of things here. So let's go back to our code and let us, for example, add some other items in here. So I'm going to add that stack layout again. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and push this down underneath it. So we have opening tag, close tag. I want to point out here that here, stack layout has an open tag, items inside of it, and then a close tag. This label can be described in multiple ways. I can put a label with a open and close tag, and then I could do label dot text color, and I could describe that color as a property. It could be very verbose, but most of the time you can just auto close it with a / and then a caret here. And what this is going to do is say, this is where it ends. This is the same as open / label, the close tag. This is a close tag. Now let's bop around a little bit in here because we see that this says horizontal options and vertical options. What this is saying is, where do you want to put this label inside of this stack layout? And it's saying, go to the center and expand horizontally. Also, go to the center and expand vertically. So if you want to see what this is doing, you can always set the background color to, let's say, orange, and see that this stack layout is housing this label, which is inside of this, that has a label inside of it that's in the center and is expanding things out as much as possible. And we note that the orange is only surrounding it. If I was to put, let's say, a button down here and say text, click me, what we're going to note is that the background of this label is still in the center, but it's expanding and taking up as much room as humanly possible. Okay? And that's really important to note, that this is trying to say, I am going to take up as much room as humanly possible on this page, and anything above, below, left, or right of me, I get priority. I'm going to expand or contrast as much as I want. So that means if I put a button on top of it, that we're going to see that that label continues to stay in the middle, try to take up as much room as possible in the layout. But the label itself is just inside of it, right? It's just inside of it, and it's only drawing this much space, but the layout is handling this for me. Now, comparatively, if I was to have a grid here, for example, which is my favorite, we can see that now there's a big button inside of here. And in fact, this will probably be click me too. The grid has rows and columns. And right now, I've said that it has one row, one column, and it is just stacking items on top of each other. So if I really wanted to recreate that view, what I could do is say row definitions, and I can say star, comma, auto. And what this will do is it'll say, I'm going to define two rows, one star being as much of space as possible, and then the second one, or zero, this is zero base, so 0, 1. 1 is going to be only as big as it needs to be. So by default, everything is in grid row 0, column 0. So if I want to move this button into grid.row 1, I type grid.row 1, and we get our view again, which is nice here. And I can then define this different if I want to. So for example, if I really wanted to, let's say, make this button and this, be squished in the center, I may do something such as star auto star here, which is 4 rows, as much as room possible, small as you need to be, as big as possible here. And I might do grid.row 1 and grid.row 2. And now we can see that they're stuck in the middle here. And really at this point, this center option, it becomes a little mute, because here I'm just going to tell it, just only center it. You're good to go. And I can, of course, move this back if I wanted to say horizontal option center, then it's going to be center again in our screen, and we're good to go. So stack layout just stacks things on top of each other. You can combine these things, for example, too. So if I wanted to put a stack layout inside at column 0 up here, if I was to say background color red, for example, now we can see that it's filling that up. I could then put, a label in here, and I say label text hello, right? And then I can really fill this up with as many as I want, and it'll be as big as it needs to be to fill those items. But what this is saying is this should be equal size, take up as much space as possible. And I'll link to documentation for grids and stack layouts too, but you'll see this here. Being able to combine these things. But again, I also want to note that I could change this horizontal to orientation to horizontal, and I see hello move horizontally stacked. All right, well, let's get back to what I actually came to build, which was a button clicker and understanding what and how I interact with these items. So far here we have welcome to Xamarin.Forms. We can make the font size or text, the font size. There we go. Font size here. Let's say large, make it larger on the screen. I'm just going to create a little bit more room here. And we want to interact with this label and this button because when I click me, I want it to actually update this label. Now, there's many ways to do this, and we're going to use MVVM or Model View View Model Architecture and data binding in a future episode. But I want to show you what XAML is, how things are created, and how you access these items. So I mentioned up top that there's some default namespaces that were brought in. And the default with no extension is everything Xamarin.Forms. That is why if I was to, let's say, just stop debugging here and bring out the toolbox over here, all of these items, I don't need to add anything onto. I don't need to add forms, whatever, anything like that. It is in the default namespace. But there are extensions and custom controls and other things that are inside of new namespaces. And X: gives us extension into the XAML language by default. So a good example here is that button and label are just views on our page. And in fact, if I go over into our properties over here, we should be able to see, let me close this down a little bit. There we go. We should be able to see that on our label over here, we have background color, automation, class ID, effects, all sorts of things on here, right? We have all sorts of different items on here. And one of the most important things is to get access to this from our code behind. And remember that we have code behind here. And what I really want to do is add a click handler and then increment that count, right? But here I don't have like a button. I can create a button and I have image buttons and I have radio buttons, but I don't have access to those UI elements. I kind of do actually. If I was to go into this dot content, I could look at all of those items inside of here and iterate through them, find by name, I could try to find them, right? It would be a little bit tedious to loop through all the items, but technically the code behind has access to the UI, but we want to keep it simple, right? We want to just access these buttons and access these labels automatically. Okay, so let's first do a few things here. I'm going to clean up my code space here. And the first thing we want to do is get access to this label. So what I'm going to do is go X:, and this is an extension inside of XAML that works with all XAML. It's a default sort of implementation. It gives me access to a data type, field modifiers, UID, but more importantly, name. And here I'm going to say label count, okay? And this is going to do some special things for me. Same thing here with this button. I'm going to say X:, name, button, click, okay? And what's cool is that as soon as I give it a name, I can go into my code behind here and I can say label count, and I have access to that view automatically. So if I wanted to, I could say hello from code behind, okay? And if I run this application, it'll no longer say welcome to Xamarin.Forms. It is now going to say label count. It'll be set to hello from code behind. And let's actually take a look here as this compiles up and deploys. I can access, I can set, I can modify any property, anything at all inside of my code behind directly. So for example, here, let's let it run and we'll see that in our UI, it's going to say hello from code behind. just like I said. Now we want to add a button click onto this. So I could come in and I could say button click, which is the name of the control. And we can see that I have all sorts of different properties and events here in my IntelliSense. I can get access to focused, pressed, released, unfocused. Here, my IntelliCode is going to say clicked. So I could actually say plus equals and tab, and it'll create the event handler for me. That'll just do that for me there. That's kind of nice. If I wanted to, what I could do here is actually go back into my XAML and go ahead and add the clicked event right in my XAML. Notice here that when I do this, it says new event handler, and it'll automatically use the name of the button that I gave it here and add a clicked event, just like we saw in the code behind. And it go ahead and it adds it right here. Same exact thing. Both of them accomplishes the same thing, but less code in my code behind. It's sort of descriptive that when I look at the XAML, oh, there's an event back there. But like, where are these things coming from? I think that's also an important thing to take a look at. And if I go over into Visual Studio, there's the show all files inside of here. And if we drop down, and where's it at? It's somewhere in, not in there, OBJ file maybe. Yep, I think it's inside of here. App XAML. Where's the coffee view? Views, here it is. Took me a little bit to find it. This will show us like all of the hidden files that were generated for me. And there is this XAML.g.cs, and that is a generated code file for us. And I want to show you this just because you may go through your entire life of Xamarin development and never realize that this stuff is automatically generated for you by the IDE automatically. So here, what this is doing is it's saying that there is a generated code attribute right here of label count, button click. Here's extensions that are being created for me automatically. And it is basically doing the find by name for me automatically and creating that for me. It's setting it up all automatically, so I don't have to worry about it later inside of my code file here. And that's what those X names and different events are handling for me automatically. Some of them are in the file. Some of them, when I parse it, it will try to detect that there is a button clicked here automatically. So it's important to know that when I add those, it is generating that code behind for me, but I just don't have to do it. It's just there for me automatically. So that's nice. All right. The next thing we're going to do is do a button click handler, right? So here I'm going to say int count equals 0. Down here, I'm going to say int plus or count plus plus. There we go. And then notice here that you got to kind of be careful of your button click handlers, because you could assign this click handler to multiple buttons technically. So if we were doing this right and I wanted to access that button, I could cast that sender, like I could say var button equals sender as button, okay? And I could check that here, right? So is this actually a button? And then if it is, I could do button, dot, and I could add inspect the variables here. But we're going to use the label, which we know exists. So I'm just going to say label.count, label count.text, and set it equal to you clicked. And then here we're going to use string interpolation, and I'll say times. So 1 time, 2 times, just put that right there. So we're going to increase it, put it here, and we're going to increase the button count every single time we click it. And we can add breakpoints here. So we can add a breakpoint, inspect the variables here. Maybe instead of saying hello from the code behind, because we don't really need that, we'll just go ahead and update it in my XAML and say, click me. There we go. And then I'm going to hit debug here. So I'll go ahead and debug this application. So again, what's nice here is that this clicked event is automatically going to be registered. It's going to be parsed. It's going to be located in the code behind. These label counts were exposed for me automatically, which is really cool. and we'll get our application up and running again. And we'll be able to click on our page and debug it too. I think it was also really cool by adding that breakpoint. So let's go ahead and click our button. There we go. We get a breakpoint here. We can see count is currently 0. If I step over it, count is now 1. Here we'll see that it is 1 as well. We can go ahead and go down and see that the text is you clicked 1 times. Click events are going to happen on the UI thread, so it's okay to access other UI elements here. And we've incremented our click. There we go, which is very cool. Now, if I don't like that orange, I can remove that background color there and it'll automatically update there too. And now notice it sort of kept its state. It didn't refresh the page. It didn't remove everything. And that is because I have inside of my option under hot reload, the changes only. So that means I don't have to save. This is the new implementation of hot reload 2.0. So you can double check that under debugging, hot reload, changes only preview. That's what I use. It is fantastic. And it keeps my state of my page so I don't have to refresh it. So yeah, so I can come in, I can modify it. If I want this to be small, it'll be small. If I want it to be large, now it'll be large again. And now we're hopefully understand a little bit of XAML, what it means, how things are defined, how we lay out items, either in a stack layout or a grid. You know, we're going to get in more details in future episodes, but I wanted you to understand XAML, its relationship to the code behind, where things are automatically generated for you, and more importantly, before you get too involved looking at things like MVVM, just, hey, how do I slap down some code, get something on the screen and start prototyping and moving through my application really quick. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this video. We're at the beginning of this application. Don't worry, we're ramping up. In these Xamarin 101 videos, I like to go a little bit deeper, so they are a little bit longer, but I think this is great, valuable implementation great, valuable knowledge, hopefully coming from me onto you. And if you do like these videos, make sure you give them a thumbs up. And if you really want more of them, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you get notified when I come out with new episodes in this series or any series here on my YouTube. Now, don't forget that I also live stream on Friday at twitch.tv/JamesMontemagno. I will leave a link in the show notes to the project and all of the previous episodes that you can catch up on so you know how to start your application and get to where we are today. And in the next videos, we're going to start to take a look at MVVM, model view view models, understand data binding, understand commanding, and everything that goes into that, which is really what we're going to be using for everything going forward in our application. All right, thanks everyone for tuning in again. Hope you have a great day, and thanks for watching.